Hi, Chad. Welcome from Miami. So psyched to
Yeah,
see you.
good to
Thank
see
you
you,
for joining
Sarah.
us in one of our R&B chats. I'm Sarah Broughton, principal of Roland Broughton Architecture and Urban Design, joining from Aspen, Colorado today with our good friend, Chad Oppenheim. Chad founded his firm, Oppenheim Architecture, in 1999 and has since grown an amazing business. Chad, you've done really amazing things and continue to do awesome
Thank
things.
you. Thank
And
you. We're a big
congratulations,
fan of yours as well. So,
congratulations on your recent Azure Award for the ALA Clubhouse and Academy in Jordan.
uh,
Very
thank
cool
you. Yeah, I just found that
project.
out yesterday. You're up to date. You're up to
Yeah,
date.
we love Azure, so congratulations on that. And thank you for agreeing to be with us today. I'm really excited to have a chat. We have some interesting things going on, as you know, in the world, and you and I have been talking a lot. So I've been really
We
appreciating
do. I feel like I feel so connected these days. So, yeah.
Well, great. Well, let's jump in. Um, one of the things I really want to talk with you about today is, so much of your architecture is rooted with nature as an ethos, your spirit of place. And just want to really understand, what do you think the future of architecture and nature is? Especially, what are you learning right now with this pandemic going on, and how is that influencing this relationship of architecture and nature?
Yeah, well, I think that what's really exciting right now is we have the time to kind of slow down and reconnect with each other, reconnect with the people around us, even us connecting more, where we have the ability to kind of take the time, but also to reconnect with nature. Those of us who are fortunate enough to be able to like leave our houses have, I think, taken the opportunity to really see the beauty that we might have taken for granted. And, for us, our work is all about kind of letting architecture disappear and letting it help you connect with each other, creating like this environment for experiences of celebrating the personal relationships, but also enforcing that relationship with nature. And it's our belief if we can kind of celebrate that and see the beauty that surrounds us that we might not often see, where we would be cherishing it more and taking better care of our planet. So, we see a lot of kind of that focus. I mean, obviously there's some really great things here in Miami. The water couldn't be more clear. There's so much more wildlife. I was just in the ocean the other day and like two manatees kind of swam by. So, I think there's a lot that's happening right now. Obviously, there's a tremendous amount of struggle and hardship, but there's also like, sort of Mother Nature is kind of coming back. And I think that's really important for us to understand in a way, because when we talk about doing things that's good for the environment and, protecting the environment, like it's not really to protect the planet, right? Like, the ocean will eventually heal, right? Like forests will eventually grow back. It's really provide the habitat that is optimal for our species. And I think that's what's really important, and that people oftentimes lose track of. It's not a, oh, let's save the planet. It's like, hey, let's save what we have because it's better for us. So, that's really a very important like philosophy that we have. And we're really just pushing that forward even more than ever. Really just driving it hard and really trying to use this opportunity to hopefully, relay that message. So thank you for allowing me the platform.
Well, one thing, it's interesting, just, getting to know you better and just seeing kind of a thread going through you and your work. Again, with your work so rooted in regionalism, right? You're a global architect, but you really
Yeah.
are rooted in the region of which you are being asked to create your art. I'm really seeing a trend in your work where you're nestling into the land, you're
Mhm.
burying, you're burrowing.
Yeah.
Where did that come from, and what, you know, how is that evolving right now?
Yeah. Like I guess I'm like a little bit caveman. Like I like to go into these nestled environments. But, I think a lot of it has to do with this idea of, civilization, let's call it, over the last 5,000 years has been all about kind of dominating nature to our advantage, like using nature, using the resources, and really thinking about, how we can survive by using nature. And what we believe that, we've kind of reached that turning point in a way, in that, we're hoping that we can have a more synergistic relationship, the idea that we can coexist rather than dominate. And it was actually the name of our studio that we did up at Cornell in the fall. This idea of coexistence, I think, is really important. So, we look a lot at really beautiful sites around the world, and we have really great opportunities to go to these incredibly exotic places, whether it be in the jungles of Costa Rica or the deserts of the Middle East. And what we want to do is not alter that landscape. We don't want to go to these places to see architecture, right? We want to go to these places and we want the architecture to help us see those places, right? So, it's this idea of something I learned in elementary school, which was kind of interesting, is that, native people and more, let's call it primitive civilization, like they lived with the land and we live on the land. So what we're trying to do is kind of reconnect and reconnect with the land and reconnect with nature, and allow us to live more with the land and build with the land. So that idea of kind of burrowing and kind of working in a way almost like a land artist, and a lot of the work that inspires me as an architect is like land art, like Michael Heizer, even I would include Richard Serra, James Turrell. These are things that inspire us to kind of see landscape, to see nature, to kind of work together with the environment rather than fight it. And a lot of it also has to do with my adversity to generating arbitrary form. I don't like arbitrary form, and there's obviously trends with computer-aided design and other things that allow kind of form to kind of be the generator. What we like to do is kind of let the feeling generate the form, and the forces of the site generate the form, rather than kind of arbitrary form sort of masturbation, if you will. Like, so we really do try to create silence, but at the same time often thinking about monumentality. And monumentality isn't necessarily huge scale, but more this kind of highly impactful and amplified connection to the site. And that's kind of like our focus. So it really kind of amplifying and connecting you through silence and through almost a cloaking or an invisibility, sort of the way that animals oftentimes are cloaked within their environment. Their skin and their kind of appearance. I was just doing some snorkeling the other day, and there was like this little reef, and there was a fish that I could like barely see, and it was like kind of like looked like a striped grouper. I was like, really kind of excited to see. It was right outside where I'm right now, and and then like suddenly it like moved, and it looked like almost another fish appeared, and it was so fascinating because suddenly it took on the appearance of the floor of the sea, the sand. So it was really fascinating. And my wife was saying like, maybe it's an octopus, because octopus are so actually like swift at that. They can actually shift shape as well as camouflage their appearance. So it's kind of interesting. And we want our architecture to kind of to do that, to kind of blend, to disappear, to let nature be the star. So yeah,
it's really great. It's super inspiring,
Thank you.
The thought about coexistence is so powerful, right? And especially right now, right, where we're all having to almost relearn that, right? What does that mean? And how do we reconnect in a different way, or reconnect in a more meaningful way? I
Yeah.
think, you and I've talked a lot about, you were honored with the Cooper Hewitt 2018 National Design Award for Interior Design. So
Yeah.
talk about coexistence with interiors, because you often
Yeah.
don't think of Chad Oppenheim for interiors, right? And
Yeah.
that's an honor.
Yeah.
And
We
I
don't
know
even think
you're
about it.
extremely
We don't even think about us. We applied for architecture and got interiors. So yeah. So I think for us, it's kind of the total work of art, right? The total experience. And we work with a lot of great interior designers. So we love collaborating with great people and thinking about the total experience, whether we're doing the interiors or we're collaborating with interiors. Like hopefully one day we were going to collaborate
I
actually
know.
before this virus. So we had like that whole plan. And for us, it's really about collaboration. It's really about, even in our studio, that collaboration. So thinking about that total experience, because what we're crafting is experience. And that experience goes down for us to everything, all the senses, like what does it smell like the scent in the place, in the environment, or the garden. And we collaborate with a lot of great landscape architects as well. But what does it sound like? What does it taste like? The food that's served there. We get down to thinking about everything, and that total, what is the sound? What is like the music that's playing, or the rustling of a fire, and all these things, and the touch and the tactility of materials. So we're viewing it in that overall total experience. And for us, the interior is part of that, and in many ways the most important part of it, right? Because you can see a building, like you've been to my house, right? Like my house is like nestled like one of these little buried little caves somewhere. But it's not about the architecture. It's about what you feel and what you sense. And we're trying to create. We're all so frantic, and that's one of the best things about this, which if you could look at silver lining of a very challenging time, we're all so frantic. We run around. We're so disconnected. Because we're always on our phones, we're always on our computers. We're like, we're the most connected species that has ever roamed the planet, but yet we're the most disconnected. So what we're trying to do in our work is create these moments of pause, these sanctuaries, these places where people can kind of slow down, disconnect, and reconnect with each other. So, we just carry that through in the materials, in the notion that things should be very comfortable and embracing. And what we're trying to do is let the environments that we create nurture the people who inhabit them, whether it be the people who live there, or people who patronize restaurants that we've done, or hotels, or other things. It's all about kind of controlling and tuning that experience to its ultimate level of serenity, peace, tranquility, and kind of like healthy life, and at the same time focusing on nature in those environments. So we tend to put less. We believe more with less. I admire interior experts who can kind of layer it on and layer it on. So, but like for us, it's more about kind of selecting, the right things that will kind of create and help create that environment that we want our patrons to enjoy. So.
Yeah, we talk a lot about editing in our studio, and spend a lot of time editing, right? And really trying to, like you said, do more with less, and really make it really meaningful. I've been drawing a lot during this pandemic, and I've been drawing my portrait every day, and it's been really kind of an interesting journal, right? To like just see.
I want to see those.
Yeah, it's been pretty fun, and just like maybe see how my face is feeling different to me every day. And
you look very fresh. I feel like, knock on wood, like we've been kind of quarantining before it even was kind of required and sheltering home. But, I feel like, because I'm on a plane nonstop, traveling, And there's something like reinvigorating about being in one place and getting rooted, you know, and getting connected and, you know, like really centered. And I took this really great yoga class once with this guru yoga guy, like Rodney Yee. And,
I love Rodney Yee. He's my
Rodney's
guy.
the best. Yeah. So I've done like some classes. I do some DVDs with him, but then I've done some of his live classes in like Sag Harbor where like, you know, Russell Simmons is like squeezed into one corner. Donna Karen's like, you know, butts in my face when she's downward dogging. And, you know, but Rodney was talking about the idea of grounding, you know, that we walk around with like this rubber interference between us and the earth. And I do really feel it, you know, like walking barefoot and really connecting to the place and getting grounded and getting rooted. And, you know, I think that's a really nice time. So you look very fresh and, you know, I feel good, you know, knock on wood.
Thank you. I think, you know, this idea of being grounded by love Rodney. We actually have his AM yoga and he's in front of Lake Powell and it's amazing. It's like,
I've seen those. Yeah. Yeah.
You know, but
it's more of a virtual, it's a virtual background like mine.
Yeah. Yeah. It's great. So, you know, I think, you know, I'd love to hear how you're changing as a designer right now, how your firm's changing. I know what's happening personally with me. Yeah, I think because I'm feeling so grounded, I'm not running around where I'm being able to reconnect with people like you on a deeper level. I'm feeling incredibly invigorated and inspired.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of hard to say those things when there's so much suffering, but like, I feel, you know, really, really good right now, physically, like mentally, I feel clear. You know, I think a lot of it has to do with like that constant like rat race, you know, that constant, got to go here, got to have that meeting, got to run out, got to meet people, got to, you know, meet your team. And I, you know, I was telling my wife Alona that, you know, in some ways I'm going to miss this time. Right. And like, you know, and she's like, well, why do you have to go back to that other thing? I'm like, well, once everything goes back, you kind of have to like get back on that, you know, that conveyor belt, that carousel and make sure, you know, you're kind of relevant in that capacity. But, you know, I think that it is a time of, you know, great reflection. You know, I've been building models of projects just with like materials I had like laying around the office that I could just grab and bring back. You know, I've been like you trying to, you know, in some ways like the design of the office and the studio and not really the physical, but, you know, what is that optimal design for that, you know, that environment and how could we do more with less or, you know, and really be, you know, what could we do best and how could we find ways that we can do more of what we do. But being as, you know, efficient as we possibly can. So, you know, I think it's a time to really like dive in. I mean, obviously nature, as I said, is flourishing and that's really good for business because our business is all about nature. And, you know, so that's really nice. And, you know, a lot of thinking about collaborations, you know, and opportunities to just jam with people that you really like and like what they're doing. And, you know, I enjoy that stuff. So, you know, for us, it's having like really great collaborations in office, really having a lot of Zoom, which we do anyway. You know, we've been using these technologies for, you know, before we were on Zoom, we were on WebEx, you know, we've been on WebEx for probably 10 years. So, but it's the idea. And since I'm always traveling, I do a lot of that Zoom and WebEx anyway. But it's trying to get kind of more efficient with that type of kind of communication and shorthand, you know, and you know, when I say more or less, it doesn't necessarily mean less people. It's just more like less effort. You know, how do you kind of like streamline your processes to get more with less input? It's not about kind of being lazy or not want to putting in the energy, but more thinking about how do you get to the result that you want with kind of less effort. So that's kind of a lot of my thinking, you know.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, you get a lot done, Chad. And
you're my hero.
I gave John your latest book for Christmas.
Thank you.
It's so great. And we want to know, who is your favorite villain from the book, and what is your favorite lair?
Right. Well, that book took 30 years, so I get things done eventually. I would say, like, you know, you remind me of my wife in the way that, you know, you get things done immediately. You know, it's like, you know, let's do some of these movies, and I'd be like still talking about doing this. Like, you're like, you know, R+B Chats, like you're ready to go. You're like, I love it. You know, like my wife's like that, you know, so she is the one who ultimately got that done. You know, so it's been an idea in my head since I was a kid. I wanted to be an architect, you know, since I was 7. And I think it may have been because I was so enamored by some of these villains' lairs. So when I was 7 or 8, my parents, you know, they decided to build a house. You know, my father had gone from, you know, working in a company to being unemployed. And I remember being on like the unemployment lines, which, you know, now we do virtually, but waiting for money for the family. And then we lived in a very, very small house, and all the houses were the same. And then little by little, he grew his business to the point where we can build a house, and we had an architect, and I would sit around the table and draw with my parents on the kitchen table. But the architect was moonlighting. He was working for another firm during the day and coming to us at night and working with a builder. So I think it was that experience and watching movies like, you know, my favorite villain, I guess, or, you know, I don't love the villains, but I think like memorable and exciting villain and the lair, it's probably your first one. You know, it's the first one always makes the most impact. And that was, you know, watching with my father, The Man with the Golden Gun, which, you know, Roger Moore was my James Bond. You know, my parents are like, oh, Roger Moore, this guy's like clown. He's not as cool as like Sean Connery. He's like a jokester, you know, like, but everyone has their like James Bond, right? You know, so like my kids, like especially my son Hendrik, like he's a Roger Moore guy because we kind of started with the Roger Moore franchise. And Roger Moore, Man with the Golden Gun, Scalamandra, the villain, but the lair was like, whoa, it's in the book. It was kind of the impetus of the book. And, you know, it's basically, he had this hangout carved like the burrowing of what we do into the rocky cliffs of Thailand, these limestone islands. And he had this like really kind of modern insertion into these rocks. It was very hidden. James Bond like flew in this kind of seaplane. And then Scalamandra like kind of blew up the plane when he arrived. You know, it was kind of like, welcome to my island. And I'm going to blow up your plane right now. But it was kind of fun because his henchman was Tattoo, which is the guy from Fantasy Island. I forget his name, Hervé something. And, you know, it was just, it blew my mind. And, you know, frankly, I guess it really inspired me because I am the caveman. You know, I am like all about like nestling and finding these moments and opportunities within these natural environments to hide, like a lair. Like a lair is actually, if you look up the definition, is like a hideout for an animal. And animals are really good at hiding and cloaking and blending in with their environments. So, you know, for me, it's got to be Scalamandra. It's got to be, you know, James Bond, Roger Moore's James Bond. And, you know, it was really a fun book. I actually learned a lot. We had some really great scholars contributed there. You know, and some of my inspiration is also from like John Lautner, who was an incredible architect, disciple of Frank Lloyd Wright. And, you know, I think in some ways, like I'm more inspired by Lautner because his work like ours appears to kind of almost be like a love affair with the site, right? It's about like romancing the site and really falling in love with it and finding those opportunities to accentuate the unique beauty of each piece of land that we choose to integrate with. So I'm a big fan of Lautner. Lautner's houses were used in many James Bond films and inspired, you know, in some ways, probably some of these sets inspired Lautner, perhaps, and some of Lautner's work inspired the work of Ken Adam, who was the production designer for many of the James Bond films. But, you know, I draw inspiration from everything. I draw inspiration from my experiences, right? Like, so my experiences are really cool layers, and I have the opportunity now to kind of build some of these things, and some of these, you know, unfortunately many are secret, you know, due to the clients and the confidentiality. But I love like having the same thoughts I've had as a child, you know, and like tapping into those things. And my son is like really into architecture, even from a younger age. And I've never
he's
really
the intern with us.
Yeah, he's gonna definitely. He would love that because he's a big skier, as you know. We've and we're still fighting for the title of the family of who's the best skier. It's kind of like a three-way. You know, my wife's certain skills better. I have certain skills, and my son at 10 kind of you know, equaled us. But you know, it's really fun book. A lot of inspiration, even from Star Wars, the Death Star, The Incredibles, Syndrome's Lair, and you know, there's many that will possibly make it into a next round. But like Blowfield's Volcano Crater, you know, inspired in my way, like thinking like a lot with like Terrell and Rodin Crater that he's created. So you know, it's a lot of like art. Inspiring art and inspiring me. So I get a tremendous amount of inspiration from that. And I wanted to share it in the book, which, you know, was 3 years in the making, but there's some great interviews with Lautner that are really amazing, with Ken Adams, with Michael Mann, who, you know, is an incredible director. And my experience with Michael Mann was such that when he was filming the Miami Vice movie, I actually moved to Miami because I used to watch Miami Vice as a kid, and I was going to move to Aspen. And my mother, I was like, "Where should I go? I have a job offer from Scott Lindenau, you know, and I'm going to be snowboarding, and you know, and then I have a job offer in Miami with one of the architecture firms, Arquitectonica, that did a lot of the buildings that you saw in the opening of Miami Vice." And my mother's like, "Why don't you go like to the real world first?" I don't know if Miami is the real world, but you know, why don't you go there instead of, you know, living in a fantasy land? And you know, so I ended up making it back to Aspen, and you know, it's a big place in my heart, and I can't wait to come visit you physically. But Michael Mann ended up using our work because he said that Miami Vice, our work kind of represented the new Miami. So from a Jersey boy watching Miami Vice to hearing that from the creator of Miami Vice was really meaningful. And you know, so Michael did a really great interview with us, and he's just a genius. So really a lot of fun, and I hope you enjoy the book. And
it's so cool to see the parallels, Chad. You know, it's really great. So thanks for sharing. And thanks.
I only work for good people, no villains. So.
Well, I'm a child of the 70s, so I definitely grew up watching James Bond, and it's actually been fun through this pandemic. We've actually watched some of the old James Bond movies.
Oh yeah.
It's so interesting compared to what's happening right now with Hollywood and how sensationalized everything is. Yeah. They're actually pretty benign and just kind of sweet in a weird way, even though they're talking about, you know, villains. And my favorite is Dr. No, when they get picked up off the beach and they get in that linear shower, right? I'm like, I want one of those.
Yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff. And Ken Adam was, you know, incredible production designer and really inspiring. But we've even like traveled to some of the places. So, you know, we were in Greece last summer, so we watched For Your Eyes Only, which takes place, and we went to like the villain's lair in the mountains in these like cliffside dwellings, and we watched it with the kids. And you know, we went into the area. So it's kind of fun. And some of it takes place in the Bahamas, and we love to work and travel to the Bahamas. So, you know, it's life imitating art and art imitating life. So,
Yeah.
but
Well,
it's
Chad,
great to speak with you.
Thank you so much for joining me today, and keep
I
it up.
know.
I look forward to more of our conversations.
We'll probably be speaking tonight. You never know.
I know. Please tell Alona hi, and we can't wait to see you
I
guys.
will. Yeah. All right. Big hug. Thank
Big
you.
hug. Thanks,
Bye.
Chad. Talk to you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Cheers.